Please excuse the mess here because there's been a lot of tinkering going on lately and I just did not have the chance to clean everything here. So I've been having a very difficult time being consistent with these videos. Not a good look since I've made such a big announcement of it 2 months ago. I thought I would have much more time to work on the game since coming back from the training, but turns out that wasn't the case. Instead, I had such a wasted month back in March, even though I did get some stuff done. But there's no point in being upset about March, so work must go on. April had its own hurdles, but I feel like I've made up for all the time that I lost back in March. Bear in mind, the only time I had to work on the game was 3 weeks in April. If you're a patron who sees the pie chart that I post on the monthly report every month, you'll see that a chunk of the time was taken by writing. And there's a reason for that. These monthly report videos tend to take a really long time to set up and make. Obviously, it's much more work than just writing the report. But I had a bit of an inspiration, so I wrote a bunch of scripts unrelated to the monthly report to be video content on this YouTube channel. So yes, I'll be making more stuff here. It will be subjects ranging from my game development experience, games that inspired me, everyday things that may or may not involve the project. I will be talking about one of the videos on this monthly report. Sorry, the dogs were arguing outside. There were so many changes in April that I was not anticipating. The game development machine that I use, this one right here, the one that you kinda see, completely crapped out on me due to Windows 11. Not entirely Windows 11's fault, it's more a case of this machine being a little old. This is an Intel NUC 8 Hades Canyon. Anyone who knows this PC knows that this machine is pretty capable thanks to its AMD Vega M graphics card. Except it's a very specific graphic card that AMD decided to stop supporting because it was a collaboration with Intel. So there was a limit to how long that collaboration was going to be. And by the latest, that driver was specifically for Windows 10, and I did the mistake of updating to Windows 11. That gave me a bunch of graphical glitches in the machine. It was acting very weirdly, but generally I wasn't happy with Windows 11 as well. Sure, it added some refinements to the UI and everything, but it added more problems that weren't there before. Certain things that I was used to doing on Windows 10 took a few more extra steps on Windows 11. And at that point on, I just decided to move to Linux. And I had Linux running on my laptops and gaming rig, which is in the other room, but this machine stayed as the only Windows machine in the house. And that's because I was using a program called Parsec. It's a remote access program that I use in order to work on the game remotely. And it's a program that I heavily rely on, or at least relied on. Because at this point, there's no Parsec hosting on Linux. They were working on one that worked on a very specific build of Ubuntu on very specific hardware. And it doesn't seem that they are working on that further. And I did find an alternative called NoMachine. NoMachine has the potential to be better than Parsec in many ways, but it does require way more setting up. It's not as straightforward as Parsec, but it's getting the job done, so I'm not complaining that much. I will be making a video talking about my experiences with Linux. It will be the next video after this video. Where I left off in the game after finishing the last video, I was having trouble getting the torches suspended on the walls. Around that time, I posted on the MB3D Discord about my problems. Despite the helpful support that I got there from the users of that server, none of what they suggested worked. I don't know why, maybe there's something wrong with my build, but they made a genuine effort to help me out and I have to commend them for that. Thank you so much if any of you are watching. So the solution that worked for me was the most inelegant solution, which was to just raise the model from a 3D object level. So I just went in Blender, raised the torch, and tried to eyeball until I got it at the level that I wanted. And that worked. But my problems did not stop there. After the torch, I worked on the door. And you've probably seen this door worked on a lot when I was posting about it on Twitter. Now, the object itself did not cause me any trouble. It did once, but that was just me being overworked and tired. But the object itself is a very simple low polygon object. Where I had problems with it was when I had it in the game, the shadow was not casting the way I was hoping it would, given that it was sitting right between the torches. Instead of having some shadow with a little bit of detail from the wooden door showing, it was just a complete pitch black void. Technically, RPG Maker is not a 3D game engine. It is not supposed to cast light like that. it is not supposed to cast realistic shadows. That is something that's a part of the 3D script that I'm using. I'm not saying it's doing a bad job, far from it. It's actually pretty impressive that it's making 3D shadows in a 2D game engine. But my problem here is that I am asking too much from it. I tried moving the lights, I tried changing the brightness, changing the spread of the light, the radius of the light. Nothing worked. To those who don't understand what the problem is, when you're working with lighting in 3D, you're throwing mathematical equations on the computer to cast light on a 3D object and calculate how strong is the light, where the light is coming from, where is it pointing, is it bouncing off of the object, where is the shadow going to be cast, how detailed is the shadow, is it a soft shadow, is it a hard shadow? All of this is just math. Another problem that I faced was that the scene became very heavy because of the dynamic lighting that I was using in that scene. And for whatever I was working on, I wasn't really happy with the way the shadows looked. They were too basic. They were hiding a lot of detail that I worked on. I decided to bake the shadows instead. And what I mean by that was that rather than have the computer cast the shadows and light, I will draw the shadows on the texture so the computer does not have to cast any light. This is much lighter to the machine, and at the same time, I can have the shadows the way I want and show as much detail as I want, even when there's a shadow cast on the object. It even looks very consistent with the shadows that are on the characters, so I kind of like that too. So how I did that was, lucky for me, there is real-time lighting in Blender. And I used that in order to cast the light on the object to know where the shadow was going to be according to where the torches were going to be. And I used that as a reference to draw on the texture. This way I can cast the shadow where I want. This way I can cast the shadow in a way that is convincing to the lighting in the scene, and at the same time draw the outline so the details are not lost. When I got that to work, I remembered that the barrels did not get that much work done on them. When I first put them in the scene, I was just testing to see if it's possible to get 3D objects in the scene. I was a little lazy with the barrel's old texture because there was no exact lid in the texture. All I did was just take one side of the barrel and use that as the lid of the barrel. I fixed that basically like it's a new texture that is in a different size dimension than the old one. And I had to work on that just to get the barrel have a lid that is shaded and textured, the same way the rest of the barrel has a texture. I also did the shadow work on the torch as well. It is far less visible compared to the door and barrel, but I thought it was important to include as well. And I think the scene looks a little better because of it. And that wasn't the only thing that I did in order to reduce the amount of processing in the game. I found out that RPG Maker was using a very old version of NWJS. Now I can't exactly tell you what NWJS exactly is. All I know is that it's some sort of JavaScript framework that the game relies on. And since it's the old one, it wasn't working efficiently. According to a few people in the RPG Maker community, there's a way to upgrade it. And from what I understand, it actually solves a lot of problems with the Mac version, which is a plus for me. But the problem is that nobody tried to get the Linux version working. And I did try to take an attempt at it and it didn't work out for me. You might find the game running a lot more efficiently and a lot more lighter on your system. So that's something to look forward to. Something I mentioned in the last few monthly reports was that I was trying to get the game up on Steam, but contrary to popular belief, it's pretty complicated to get your game up on Steam. There are a bunch of procedures that involve a lot of Valve employees to look at your information. Are the screenshots clear enough? Are the videos good? Is the description of the game telling what your players are expecting in the game? Stuff like that. And I've tried several times to get the game up there, and every time I got declined. Obviously, I don't have time to keep on trying, mainly because I'm still working on the game. So I called up my friend Meredith to help me out with this. She is a game business consultant, and she has way more experience with this kind of thing than I have. And after a few discussions with her regarding the game, we looked through all my information and we had a few discussions about the game. We kind of agreed that it's probably a little too early for the game. She suggested that I wait up until I complete the first chapter, which was what I planned to be like the full demo of the game. And I thought she was right. The game's Steam page is gonna wait a little longer until I have something up there. Again, thank you to Meredith for helping me out in this. I'll leave her contact information in the video description below. She does a lot of work in setting up Steam pages. I think she also does marketing, but she also works extensively in game accessibility. So if that's something that you're looking into adding in your game, do send her a message. And that was pretty much it for April. I think that I have done way more work in this month than I did in past months. Hopefully I made up for the lost time in March. And from here on, if I do plan to do video work on that given month, it is going to be part of the last week of the month, so it does not interfere with the game development throughout the month. It's going to be for the monthly report and any other video that I plan to do. Like this video or dislike it, subscribe if you want to see more. Leave your suggestions in the comment below. I would love to hear what would you like me to make in terms of video content. Roses Will Rise is a free game. If you would like to support it, you can name your price up on Itch.io for a one-time payment. But if you want to support it monthly, you can go to my Patreon. The paid version of the game is the exact one you get for free, but you get bonuses for the paid version that currently include wallpapers, but I do plan to include more things like an art book and a copy of the original manuscript and stuff like that. Supporting me on Patreon will give you a paid version of the game, but it will also give you a place in the game's special thanks once the game is done. As long as you still have an active Patreon account, even after you stopped supporting me, do expect me to send you a message and ask for the name that you want to be credited as. And that is all. Eid Mubarak.